As a wrestling or jiu-jitsu athlete, it's very important that you have a high level of work capacity so you can enhance your overall performance on the mat and decrease your risk of injury. Let's discuss. What's going on, guys? My name is Josh Sleds. I am the BJJ strength coach, and I'm here to discuss a question that I got from Instagram about work capacity. What is work capacity? How could someone increase their work capacity for wrestling or jiu-jitsu? And everything else in between. That's what we're going to be going over today in this video. Now, it's important to recognize that work capacity has a variety of definitions depending on what sport you're in. So if we kind of look at the spectrum, right? We have powerlifting on this side. You are so far on this spectrum as a powerlifting athlete, all you care about is being as strong as freaking possible. Work capacity for a powerlifter may look like one's ability to perform lots of sets for a decent amount of reps at a very high intensity and be able to recover and do that multiple times per week. So you look at some of the top powerlifters in the world. You look at guys like Andrew Herbert. These guys are freaking insane, and they're able to lift these crazy loads multiple times per week and be able to sustain that week after week after week as they prepare for a powerlifting meet and ultimately break world records. Now, work capacity for them is going to look very different than, say, a marathon runner. A marathon runner, their definition of work capacity may look like one's ability to sustain a decently high pace. You know, a marathon isn't a sprint, so they are running fast, but they're not running full clip the entire time. Work capacity may look like their ability to log a bunch of miles over the course of a training week. So say a marathon runner runs 100 miles a week. The marathon runner that runs 200 miles a week has a greater sense of work capacity or a greater level of work capacity that they can pull from compared to a marathon runner that only runs 100 miles a week. Now, we do need to talk about recovery. It's one thing to put in a bunch of work and training during a week, but if you can't recover from that, then that's not really a good definition of work capacity. That just means you're training really hard for 1 week and then you tank because you're all banged up and beat up and you can't repeat that week after week after week. So we talked about the two extreme ends of the spectrum, right? Extreme end on powerlifting over here, extreme end on a marathon runner over here. Now, where do grappling sports fall? Grappling sports kind of meet in the middle somewhere. There's so many other factors that go into grappling sports, and especially these factors are important when it comes to describing what we're going to be doing to increase our work capacity specifically for grappling. Now, I would define grappling specific or grappling sport specific work capacity as one's ability to push a high pace in a live training session or in a match, be able to recover in time for multiple matches on end, and then also one's ability to train and accumulate a lot of mat time without getting banged up too bad, without overtraining or overreaching, so to speak, and being able to repeat that week after week after week. Essentially, how much work can you put in a single training session and recover and come back the next day and do it again? So right now, I'm not training too much on the mats. I'm right now with work and everything. I've been pretty busy. So really, I'm only able to get in 1 to 2, sometimes 3 solid training sessions per week. So my work capacity right now is very small. I went to jiu-jitsu earlier this week on Monday. I was so sore afterwards, and I wasn't even training that hard. So my level of work capacity right now is very low. My boy Joe Bon, on the other hand, he has been training like a madman. He's actually going to be competing here pretty soon. At the time that I'm filming this, I believe he's competing tomorrow. But he has a very high level of work capacity. He is able to lift weights at 4:30 in the morning. He's able to train pretty hard a couple days a week at 11 o'clock, and then in between those hard lifting days that are paired up with his hard rolling days, he has other days in between there where he focuses on drilling, and he is drilling at a pretty high pace. He's not necessarily going that hard. It's not finals of IBJJF Worlds every single drill, every single training session, but he's able to maintain that pace for a long period of time as he's getting in these drills and accumulating a lot of training volume over the course of the week. So how do we increase work capacity? You see, the thing is a pyramid mathematically is only as wide as its base. So if you have a pyramid that has a very tiny base, it's not very tall. So the peak of your performance is not going to be that high. If you can build up a large base of work capacity or general physical preparedness, you actually are able to enhance the peak of your overall competition performance or overall training performance because you have a lot more to pull from. The more that you do, my mentor, Mark Bell, has a very famous quote, do more, be more. The more that you do, the more that you can handle. Now, when it comes to training, there are some nuances to that because it's not just about how much you do, it's about how much you can actually recover from. So if you're able to develop a large base of work capacity, recover from that work capacity, you're gonna get more reps at a higher quality than you would if you were doing them in a fatigue state. You're gonna be able to manage fatigue a lot better. You're gonna be able to increase the pace that you can sustain for longer periods of time in a training session or in a live match. All of those things are going to contribute to you performing well and ultimately winning more matches and getting injured less. So what can we do to increase work capacity? I have a few methods that I use with a lot of my athletes. I use them myself, I use them with my athletes, and I've seen great success with everyone, to be honest, that's used this method of increasing work capacity. There are going to be 3 different things that you can do to increase work capacity. The first one is going to be sleds. Sleds are an amazing training tool, and here's why. Sleds are a concentric only exercise. Now, what does that mean? You have the concentric movement of a muscle, the isometric lack of movement, I guess you could say, and the eccentric movement. So if I'm doing a bicep curl, right? The contraction of my bicep, that's going to be the concentric portion. The holding or the pause at any point in that range of motion is going to be the isometric. And then the lowering phase is going to be called the eccentric or the lengthening phase. Now, here's the deal. When you're weight training and you're lifting heavy or you're just trying to get jacked, right? The eccentric phase of most exercises are gonna cause the most amount of muscle damage and take the longest to recover from, as well as just making you really freaking sore. Sleds have no eccentric component to it. Every step you take with the sled, whether you're walking backwards, walking forwards, you're doing a sled face pull, doing a sled row, sled tricep extension, sled curl, whatever you're doing, every rep is concentric only, which means you can accumulate a lot of training volume with sleds, not be sore the next day, recover extremely fast, and still get an amazing workout in a training session. Sleds are a great way that you can increase your general physical preparedness and develop a higher level of work capacity. How I would program these in an athlete's workout would be to include them as part of your warm-ups. And then maybe, so say you do 2 big training days. If you're working a condensed conjugate model, which is a video that I'm going to be releasing here very shortly, you have a really heavy lower body day, and on that day, you're going to go really fast for the upper body. On your second day, you're going to go really heavy for the upper body and really fast for the lower body. Those are your kind of 2 big training days. If you were to add in a third day to increase your general physical preparedness and boost up your work capacity, I would say on that third day, that's where you're going to do the majority of your sled work. Doesn't need to be too complicated. You could do 4 different sled exercises, walking forward, walking backwards, walking side to side, doing some sort of sled face pull, sled row. Go for about a minute or down and back on a turf, whatever you have available. On all of those exercises, run through that for about 20, 30 minutes maybe. You do that from week to week. Doesn't need to be heavy, doesn't need to be super hard. The fact that you're just promoting blood flow, staying moving, working up a little bit of a sweat over time, over the course of 8, 10, 12 weeks, you're really going to see some increases in your general physical preparedness. That's going to be the first method, is to use sleds. Now, if you don't have access to sleds, that's okay, because there are some other things that I use in a very similar fashion to help increase work capacity and general physical preparedness. So I call these kind of my GPP giant sets. Essentially, all you do is you pick 4 different exercises. They need to be There's a couple criteria here for what these exercises need to be. They need to be low intensity, usually single joint exercises. They don't always need to be, but a lot of times they are single joint exercises, just nothing that's a heavy compound movement like a heavy squat or a heavy deadlift or a heavy bench, overhead press, anything like that. These are more like bodybuilding exercises. Low intensity, isolation, or single joint exercises. If you have access to bands or chains, you definitely want to use bands or chains, and they need to be within the 15, preferably 25 to 35, maybe even upwards of 50 reps per set. And then the fourth thing that they need to do is they need to attack your weaknesses. You're gonna pick 4 exercises. So for me, for example, I would probably pick, if I didn't have access to sleds, I'd probably pick a walking lunge. I would probably pick a banded face pull, a banded curl or tricep push down, and probably a banded leg curl. You're gonna run through all 4 of those exercises back to back to back with minimal rest between each exercise. As soon as you're done with that last exercise, you're gonna check your heart rate and you're gonna rest, focusing on nasal breathing, rest until your heart rate dips below 130. You're not allowed to start the next set until your heart rate dips below 130. You wanna be taking in slow breaths in through your nose, exhaling throughout your mouth. You can work on only nasal breathing if you can, and if you're comfortable with that, that's great too. But you're gonna wait till your heart rate dips below 130. After that, you got the green light to start your next set. Over time, you're gonna get a little bit better at this. The key to this is to not push it to be too heavy. Again, we're doing 15 to 50 reps per set, and usually I run this for anywhere from 3 to 4 sets per workout. You really don't wanna annihilate yourself and go super heavy. You already have 2 days where we're going really heavy for the upper and lower body. So for this, we're focusing on promoting blood flow. We're focusing on a lot of restoration and just promoting as much blood to be flushing through our joints, flushing through some of those painful areas that get banged up at jiu-jitsu a lot. We're focusing on attacking weaknesses. We're focusing on correcting muscular imbalances and just kind of muscling up, so to speak, building up some layers of muscle to help protect our body, things around our neck, things around our hips, things around our knees, things around our low back. So I call those my GPP giant sets. I do those usually once or twice a week, depending on where an athlete is in the season. They might not need something like that at the moment, or if they're in season, it may look a little bit different. The exercises and the format may change. The general structure is 4 exercises, 3 to 4 sets per exercise, 15 to 50 reps per exercise. Hit each exercise back to back to back. Once you finish that last exercise, rest until your heart rate dips below 130 before you start that next set. And then the third and last method that you could use to increase work capacity is really just to increase your overall base level of aerobic conditioning. Now, what does aerobic mean? Aerobic means with oxygen, anaerobic means without oxygen. Anaerobic is very explosive, very fast. Think of 100-meter dash, lifting weights, sprinting, box jumps, really explosive medicine ball throws. Those are all anaerobic. You look at things like long, slow distance running, long bouts on the assault bike, long bouts on the C2 rower. Those are all aerobic exercises. And so what you can do to increase your work capacity from just a pure conditioning perspective, you can go on some longer runs to work on your road work. People talk about road work all the time. Anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes, keeping your heart rate between 135 to 150 beats per minute. It's gonna change depending on how old you are, how experienced you are, how good of shape you're in, all that good stuff. But essentially, it's a very average pace that you're sustaining for a long period of time, 20 to 30 minutes. You really only need to do this once or twice a week. If you're not doing the GPP giant sets, this would be a good replacement for that. But if you are doing the GPP giant sets, just keep it at those 3 training days. If you're on the mats all the time, you're on the mats 6, 7, sometimes 8 or 10 times per week, you really don't need to add in a whole lot of road work because you're already getting a ton of conditioning with your jiu-jitsu training, with your wrestling training. So if you're lifting heavy 2 days a week, I'd say on that 3rd day, you can do a GPP giant set, or you can do some longer format, just very light aerobic conditioning. Now, there's a way to program those things, and you do want to be careful with what modalities you use for those longer conditioning bouts. If you're running all the time and your knees and your ankles aren't in good enough shape to handle all that pounding with every step, that's going to leave you pretty banged up when you go to your next jiu-jitsu session. So maybe look into something like an echo bike, an assault bike, a ski erg, a Concept 2 rower, things that aren't going to beat your body up too bad, but are also going to allow you to work at a decent pace for about 20 to 30 minutes, keeping your heart rate between 135 to 150 beats per minute. And that's it. That's how you can increase work capacity. Work capacity is a huge component of being a great jiu-jitsu or wrestling athlete. Remember, the more that you do, the more that you can handle, but it's not always about what you can do. It's about what you can do and recover from. That's all I got for you guys today. If you guys are interested in my free shoulder pain relief series, all you got to do is just click the link below, and I'll catch you guys later. Peace.